The market was alive with noise, a constant hum of voices, wheels, and mechanical whistles. The place was enormous, a vast expanse of metal walkways, hovering platforms, and glass displays where people and goods were bought and sold. But today, the crowd's attention was fixed on a small section in the center, a raised platform surrounded by bright lights. There, three young adults stood together, their faces pale under the harsh illumination. Their eyes were alert, wary, and full of something deeper than fear, something that refused to break, even in the face of humiliation. They were considered defective by the world outside. They could not reproduce. In a society obsessed with perfection and genetic potential, that single trait rendered them useless, unwanted, and publicly for sale. Signs hung above their heads with bold letters, stating their sterilization, and the crowd whispered, pointed, and laughed. Some even dared to throw insults. The three held themselves as best they could, trying to appear human and proud, but the shame the system forced on them weighed heavily. The tallest among them, a young man named Aaron, kept his chin high, his dark eyes scanning the crowd for any sign of kindness. Beside him was Lyra, whose delicate hands twisted nervously but whose gaze was fierce and intelligent. She refused to look down, refusing to give the market the satisfaction of seeing her broken. The third, Joss, had a quiet, steady air. His calmness was like a shield, protecting the group from letting panic show. They were all aware of the stakes. They had been warned what would happen if no one bought them. The auctioneer, a man in a bright red coat, raised his hand, signaling the start of the bidding. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a rare collection, imperfect, yes, but alive. 3 beings, sterile but strong, clever, and ready for service. Place your bids." His voice boomed across the market. Aaron's stomach twisted. He had seen auctions before, seen how quickly humans were reduced to numbers and prices. He felt every eye on them, and it was not curiosity. It was calculation, greed, or amusement. Lyra shivered beside him, not from cold, but from the realization that this could be the moment they lost any chance at freedom. Joss's hand brushed against hers briefly, a silent promise. We survived together. Bids started small. Some people shouted numbers quickly, testing the auctioneer, testing the patience of the sellers. Each bid was like a knife, cutting a little deeper into their hope. Aaron wanted to shout, to run, to do anything to escape. But escape was impossible here. The market was enclosed, surrounded by hovering walls that could scan, track, and trap them instantly. No one could just walk away. Above the crowd, in a quieter corner, a man watched silently. His name was Kale, a widower with 2 children. He was not here to gamble, to profit, or to satisfy some strange societal urge. He was looking for companionship for his children, a family to protect, someone who could bring warmth to the small house he called home. He saw the 3 on the platform and noticed something that others ignored: their humanity. Their eyes, their movements, their small gestures spoke of courage, intelligence, and life. Kale's 2 children, small and wide-eyed, tugged at his sleeve. They whispered softly, not fully understanding why the man's attention was fixed on the platform, but Kale could feel it deep in his chest. These 3, unwanted by the world, could become something far greater: a family, a team, a chance at happiness. The auctioneer's voice rose again. "Do I hear 500 credits for the 3 together?" The crowd murmured, some chuckling. It was a low offer, almost an insult. Bids climbed slowly, each one punctuated by laughter or disbelief. Aaron, Lyra, and Joss exchanged glances. They had expected cruelty, but the magnitude of it, this casual buying and selling of lives, was shocking. Kale whispered to his children, his voice calm but firm. "Watch and see. Sometimes the world doesn't know what's important, but we can do what is right." He took a deep breath, then pressed a hand on his pocket device. He knew what he had to do, even if it was impossible. The auctioneer's voice boomed louder. 1,000 credits. Who will bid higher for these 3 defective beings? Think carefully." The crowd laughed again, some jeering. Lyra's hands clenched, her knuckles white. "We're nothing to them," she muttered under her breath. Aaron placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "We're more than they will ever see," he said softly. Joss nodded, silent but resolute. Kale pressed the device again. He whispered, "I will take them all." A few heads turned in his direction. He was a quiet man, unassuming, and certainly not a typical bidder. The auctioneer squinted at him, intrigued. "Did the gentleman say all 3? Are you sure? That is an unusual choice." "The price will be 15,000 credits. I will take them." Joss's lips curved into the faintest smile. The 3 were stunned. For the first time in months, maybe years, they felt something other than fear and despair: hope. Kale descended toward the platform, holding his hands out gently. "You are free to come with me," he said. His voice was calm, kind, and unwavering. "You don't have to stay here, you're coming home." They had been betrayed so many times before, promised safety and then abandoned. Could they trust this stranger? Kale crouched slightly, letting his small children peek from behind him. "See, you're not alone anymore," he said softly. The children waved timidly, their innocence and warmth bridging a gap that had seemed impossible to cross. Finally, Aaron stepped forward first, testing the reality of freedom. Lyra followed, holding Joss's hand. The crowd watched as the three descended the platform with Kale, leaving behind the whispers, the laughter, and the judgment. Each step felt like a small victory, a reclaiming of their own lives. Outside the marketplace, the world was no less harsh, no less cold, but the first taste of choice, of safety, was intoxicating. Kale led them through winding streets, careful to avoid the more dangerous sections. The children ran ahead, laughing, chasing each other, while the trio followed behind cautiously. Every so often, Aaron glanced around, ensuring no one was following. Lyra held onto Joss's sleeve, her eyes wide with wonder and disbelief. Kale walked calmly, aware of their nervous energy. He spoke gently, offering small reassurances. "I know it's strange," he said, "but you are safe now. No one can force you back. This is your choice. You belong to no one but yourselves and maybe to us if you want." Words felt heavy after so many months of abuse and objectification. Instead, they observed each other, taking in the human presence that felt so unfamiliar. The children laughed and asked endless questions, drawing shy smiles from Lyra and Joss, and even a small laugh from Aaron. As night fell, the lights of the city reflected off the hovering vehicles above, casting a soft glow on the streets. Kale led them to a small transport vehicle, simple but sturdy. Inside, the air was warm and the smell of home, a mixture of bread, clean cloth, and the faint tang of machinery, comforted them in ways they didn't realize they had missed. For the first time, they didn't have to pretend. They didn't have to be objects, numbers, or property. They were humans and someone had chosen them for their humanity. Aaron finally spoke, breaking the silence. Why us?" he asked, his voice low but filled with curiosity and doubt. Kale smiled softly, his eyes steady. "Because I saw something no one else did. I saw that you were alive, that you could teach, laugh, fight, love like anyone else. I didn't care what the world said. I only cared about what was true. Not for what you cannot do." "I didn't think freedom could feel like this," he murmured. Aaron nodded, feeling a strange weight lift from his chest. Lyra rested her head against his shoulder, silent but relieved. Kale's children pressed closer to their father, feeling the warmth of this unexpected, growing family. None of them spoke, but all of them knew the truth. They had been chosen. They had been rescued. And for the first time in their lives, the future felt possible. Outside, the world was still harsh. Inside, hope had arrived, and it was stronger than anyone could have predicted. The streets outside the market were quieter now, though the hum of the city still lingered in the air. Kale guided the three new companions and his two children through the winding lanes, keeping an eye on every corner. He had lived here long enough to know which alleys were safe and which were not. Even so, he could not ignore the feeling that someone from the auction might have noticed him. The city was full of watchers, always scanning, always calculating. Aaron walked closest to Kale, his eyes flicking from shadow to shadow. His heart was still pounding, but for the first time in months, it was not entirely from fear. There was excitement mixed with disbelief. Freedom was new to him. The idea that someone would see value in him for who he was, not for what he could produce, made him feel alive in a way he had not felt before. Lyra stayed close to Joss, holding his hand as if she feared that letting go might shatter this strange safety. "Do you think they'll follow us?" she asked quietly. Her voice barely rose above the soft hum of the streets. Joss shook his head slowly, though his eyes were alert. "If they do, we'll know soon enough, but Kale seems careful. He knows what he's doing. There are parts of the city that aren't safe." The trio had survived by being clever, and the lessons they had learned in fear and rejection made them surprisingly resilient. As they moved, Kale began to talk quietly, offering small reassurances. "I know this is strange for you, for all of you, but the house isn't far. You'll see it soon, and you'll understand that it's yours as much as mine." But Kale's calm voice, his careful movements, and the way he never raised a hand or a harsh word made her question that instinct. Could it be true? Could someone actually care without expecting something in return? Joss offered a small, almost imperceptible nod, silently agreeing with Lyra. Aaron, however, allowed himself a moment to relax. "Maybe we've finally found a place that isn't horrible," he murmured. Their journey was not without danger. As they passed a quieter street, a small hover drone emerged from the shadows, scanning the group with red lights. Cale froze, his hand instinctively reaching to cover one of the children. "Stay close," he whispered. The drone hovered, its sensors focused on the trio. Aaron's heart began to race. "They're here," he muttered, almost to himself. Cale stepped forward calmly. "Yes, they are, but we won't let them scare us." He tapped a small device on his wrist, and the drone's sensors wavered before it drifted away, confused by the signal. The children's laughter resumed hesitantly, and Lyra let out a small breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "That was clever," Joss said quietly, a hint of admiration in his voice. "I didn't think anyone could trick one of those drones." The group finally approached the outskirts, where the streets opened into wider lanes lined with old buildings. Cale's home was modest, simple but warm. A small, sturdy building with lights glowing through its windows and a faint smell of bread and wood smoke promised safety. The children rushed forward eagerly, their small feet clattering on the metal walkway. "Home," Leo shouted, and Mara followed, spinning around happily. The trio slowed, still cautious, but curiosity and relief softened their features. Cale opened the door and gestured inside. "Welcome. This is where you can rest and eat and finally feel safe." There were shelves filled with books, small mechanical projects scattered across the floor, and pictures on the walls of people they had never met. For the first time, the three felt something they had not felt in years: belonging. Cale's children ran ahead, exploring, laughing, and asking questions. Lyra knelt to watch them, smiling faintly. "They're happy," she whispered to Joss. Joss nodded, still cautious but feeling a flicker of hope. "And it's contagious," he replied. Aaron wandered toward the small kitchen, noting the tools and supplies neatly arranged. He had always been used to surviving, making do with scraps, and yet here was a place where things worked and no one asked for anything in return. It was almost disorienting. Cale followed him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to work yet," he said. "Just rest, learn that you can breathe without worry." Yet here in this small, warm house, the fear was tempered by safety. Dinner was simple but nourishing. Cale served food to all five, encouraging the trio to eat without ceremony or expectation. The children giggled as Aaron accidentally spilled a bit of soup, and Lyra corrected him gently, not harshly. The small family laughed, sharing stories, learning each other's voices. After dinner, Cale led them to a small sitting area with cushions and blankets. The children cuddled close to him as he spoke quietly. "You've been through much," he said, "and you will be tested again, no doubt, but here you are safe. You are valued. You are more than what the world says you are." I never thought anyone would say that to me without expecting something back. "We're being watched," he said, quietly tense. Cale looked out through a small window, his eyes narrowing. "Perhaps," he admitted, "but there is nothing to fear yet. We will be ready if anything comes." The trio remained awake longer, talking softly about who they were, their past lives, and the dreams they had long hidden. Aaron spoke of wanting to study maps and stars, Lyra about creating art and telling stories, and Joss about building things that could help people. For the first time, their thoughts were not restricted by judgment or fear. They could dream freely. Cale watched them silently, realizing that this was more than just saving them from the auction. This was about giving humanity back to those who had been denied it, about showing that worth was not measured by what society demanded, but by what lay within each heart. Morning arrived with golden light spilling through the windows. The city outside was already stirring, unaware that inside this small house, something remarkable was beginning. Cale stepped outside briefly, checking the streets, ensuring no threats had lingered overnight. Everything was calm, at least for now. He returned inside and found the trio awake, their faces reflecting a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Today we will start truly living," he said simply. "We will explore, learn, and prepare for whatever comes. You are not alone, not anymore." The children rushed in, pulling the trio toward the small garden outside. Leo pointed at the sky. "Look, the lights, they're beautiful," Mara laughed, chasing after him. The trio smiled, tentative at first, then with growing ease, allowing themselves to enjoy the simple wonders they had been denied for so long. Cale watched them, a quiet pride swelling in his chest. They had survived cruelty, auctions, and rejection. Now they had a chance to survive something entirely different: life. Real life, where value was not measured by usefulness or perfection, but by courage, heart, and the simple act of being human. By the end of the day, laughter had replaced whispers of fear, small bonds had formed, and the trio began to see themselves not as defective, but as capable, as worthy. and as part of something greater than themselves. And though the shadows of the outside world still lingered, the warmth inside this small home was stronger. It was the spark of something new, something unstoppable, a family born not of blood, but of choice, courage, and the simple truth that humanity could shine even in the darkest places. The morning sun poured through the windows, casting a warm glow over the small home. The trio, Aaron, Lyra, and Joss, stirred from their sleep, stretching limbs stiff from a night spent in unfamiliar comfort. For the first time in what felt like years, they woke without the gnawing fear of auctions, of being sold, of being unwanted. Instead, the house felt alive with quiet energy. The children, Leo and Mara, had already begun their day, chattering excitedly and exploring every corner of the small garden outside. Kale had risen before them, quietly checking the house and the surrounding streets. He wanted to ensure that no one had followed them and that their safety was not just temporary. When he returned, he carried a small tray of food, simple bread and fruit, but its warmth and the effort behind it made it feel like a feast. Aaron was the first to notice, his dark eyes scanning the tray and then Kale's face. "You did all this for us?" he asked, incredulous. Kale smiled faintly. "For all of us," he said. "This is home now. You will eat, rest, and learn that life can be more than survival." "Not anymore." After breakfast, Kale suggested they explore a nearby park, a place where the children could run freely and the trio could begin to understand the world outside the market through a lens that was not fear. The path to the park was quiet, and the city's usual hum seemed distant here. Aaron's steps were cautious, alert to every shadow, every movement, every potential threat. Lyra walked beside Joss, her eyes taking in the sunlight, the trees, and the open sky. It was almost surreal to her, the idea of freedom that did not feel like a trap. At the park, the children ran ahead, squealing in delight as they chased each other around the grassy fields. The trio hesitated at first, unsure if it was safe to relax, but Kale stayed close, his presence reassuring. "You can enjoy this," he said. "It's yours to experience, nobody can take it from you." Joss sat on a nearby bench, watching the children play, and for the first time he allowed himself to breathe, to relax, and to imagine a future where he was not constantly calculating survival. As the afternoon passed, Kale and the trio shared stories of their pasts. Aaron spoke of maps he had memorized, of star charts he had studied, of places he had dreamed of visiting but never could. Lyra talked about books she had read in secret, poems she had written that no one had seen, paintings she had imagined but never painted. Joss described inventions he had tinkered with, clever mechanisms that could make life easier, yet had been overlooked because of his sterilization. Kale listened, fascinated, realizing the depth and potential of those whose society had discarded. His children, meanwhile, absorbed the stories, wide-eyed, asking endless questions. Leo asked Aaron if he could teach him about the stars, and Mara begged Lyra to paint her a picture. The small home, the small park, and this simple time together became the first steps toward a new life, one filled with trust, learning, and hope. As the sun began to dip, casting long shadows over the city, Kale decided it was time to return home. On their way, a small commotion caught their attention. A pair of figures moved quickly down the street, scanning the buildings, their eyes sharp and their movements purposeful. Aaron froze, instinctively pulling Lyra behind him. "They're following us," he whispered. Kale's face tightened, but his voice remained calm. "It seems we have company," he said. "Stay close, all of you." They were trackers, likely sent by someone from the auction or an organization that had interests in reclaiming the trio. Kale led them to a small courtyard, hidden behind high walls and old machinery. He crouched beside the children and the trio. "We will stay here for a moment," he whispered. "Let them pass, or let us prepare if they try anything." They did not see the small courtyard. Moments passed, tension stretching the air. Finally, the trackers moved on, disappearing into the distance. Aaron exhaled, his body trembling slightly. Lyra rested her head against his shoulder, grateful for the brief respite. Kale stood, guiding everyone back to the safety of the house. "They will not stop watching us," he said. "But here we are safe for now, and we will be ready when they return." Joss worked on a small mechanical toy for the children, demonstrating how curiosity and patience could turn simple materials into something useful and magical. The day passed with laughter, teaching, and quiet moments of reflection. The trio began to understand that this was not just a home. It was a place where they could grow, learn, and explore their talents without fear of judgment. They began to see themselves as more than what the auction had claimed, defective, useless, and unwanted. As evening approached, Kale gathered everyone together. Tomorrow we will start building routines, he said. We will learn, practice, and prepare for the outside world, but tonight we rest and we enjoy what we have earned. Aaron, Lyra, and Joss sat together, sharing stories of past hardships, their voices soft but steady. The bond between them deepened, strengthened by shared experiences and the knowledge that they were no longer alone. Cale watched them silently, a sense of pride and relief filling his chest. He knew the world outside would not be kind, that challenges would come, but he also knew the strength that lay in this small family. They had survived cruelty, auctions, and rejection, and now they had the chance to thrive together. Night fell and the house grew quiet. The trio lay awake for a while, reflecting on the day. Aaron stared at the ceiling, imagining the stars beyond the city, and felt a hope he had never dared to feel before. Lyra clutched a small piece of paper, a drawing she had made for Mara, and felt a warmth that replaced the cold emptiness she had known. Joss traced the outline of the small mechanical toy he had built, thinking about how he could improve it, not for survival, but for joy. Cale checked the perimeter one last time before settling into his own room. He listened to the gentle breathing of the children and the quiet murmurs of the trio, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. They were more than survivors. They were beginning to live. The following morning, the trio awoke to a new routine. Cale encouraged them to help with household chores, to teach the children skills, and to explore their own abilities. Aaron discovered a small telescope, and he and Leo spent hours observing the skies. Lyra taught Mara to write simple words and draw shapes, fostering creativity and imagination. Joss showed them how to construct small machines, explaining principles of mechanics and problem-solving. Every day brought small victories. The trio began to smile more, to speak openly, and to laugh genuinely. They shared meals without fear, walked through the streets without constant vigilance, and slowly the shadow of the auction began to fade from their minds. Yet Cale remained vigilant. He knew the world outside had not changed. He could not ignore the possibility that someone would return, seeking to reclaim what had been sold. But he also knew that the trio, the children, and he were stronger together. They had learned to trust, to adapt, and to defend themselves if necessary. As evening descended, the family gathered outside, watching the city lights flicker. The children ran ahead, their laughter echoing through the streets, while Aaron, Lyra, and Joss shared quiet smiles, a sense of belonging warming their hearts. Cale stood nearby, observing, reflecting on how far they had come in just a few days. They had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and yet here they were, alive, hopeful, and united. The house was more than a shelter. It was a symbol of possibility, of human resilience, and of the power of kindness in a harsh world. For the first time in years, Aaron, Lyra, and Joss felt what it meant to be seen, valued, and wanted, not for what they lacked, but for who they were. And as the night deepened, with the city's lights shimmering around them, they understood something profound. Together, they could face anything the world might throw at them, and perhaps in their own small way they could change it. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of machinery and distant smoke from the city. Cale stepped outside to check the perimeter, as he had done every morning since they had arrived at the small house. His eyes scanned the streets, the alleys, and the rooftops. Nothing seemed out of place, yet he could not shake the feeling that someone was watching. He had learned long ago that danger often came quietly, without warning, and he refused to be caught off guard. Inside, Aaron, Lyra, and Joss were beginning their day. The trio had grown accustomed to routines, helping with chores, teaching the children, and exploring their own talents. Aaron adjusted the small telescope he had found, explaining the constellations to Leo, who listened with wide-eyed wonder. Lyra helped Mara mix colors on a small palette, showing her how blending could create entirely new shades. Joss worked with scraps of metal, building a small mechanism that could fetch water from a low barrel without spilling it. The peaceful morning was interrupted by a distant hum, soft at first but steadily growing louder. Cale's gaze sharpened. "They're coming," he said quietly. The sound was unmistakable, hovercraft engines, light but powerful, moving steadily toward their home. Aaron froze, his fingers tightening on the telescope. "From the auction," he whispered. "They've found us. Stay close and trust me, you are safe with us." The first hovercraft appeared on the horizon, a sleek black vehicle gliding low above the street. A second followed, and then a third, all moving in unison. Cale guided everyone to the small courtyard behind the house, where they had set up some improvised defenses the trio had suggested in the previous days. Joss pointed to small tripwires they had hidden among the crates and barrels, while Aaron and Lyra checked makeshift barricades and escape routes. The hovercrafts descended slowly, scanning the area. Figures emerged from each vehicle, dressed in black uniforms with visors that reflected the morning light. They were clearly trained, coordinated, and armed, but Cale was not intimidated. He signaled for everyone to stay calm. "We are stronger together," he whispered. "Trust yourselves, trust each other, and they will not succeed. Resistance will be met with force." Joss adjusted a small mechanical device, ready to release smoke and obscure visibility. Aaron checked the lines they had set for distraction, thin wires with small bells that would alert them to movement. Lyra took the children to a slightly hidden area, calming them while keeping them out of harm's way. The figures advanced slowly, testing the defenses, but each trap and precaution had been placed thoughtfully. A tripwire triggered, releasing a net that tangled the first figure's feet. A smoke device went off, creating confusion and forcing the attackers to pause. The trio moved with precision, coordinating their actions with Cale's instructions, proving that intelligence, planning, and quick thinking could rival brute force. One of the attackers lunged forward, attempting to grab Lyra, but Aaron intercepted, using a combination of momentum and a small metal bar to block the motion. Lyra twisted free, her small movements precise, honed from years of survival and quick thinking. Joss activated a mechanical device that triggered a small burst of water, startling the second figure and forcing him to stumble. Cale observed calmly, noting each movement, each weakness, and each advantage. "Good," he said quietly. "Keep them off balance. They are trained, yes, but we have something stronger: creativity and coordination." Lyra seized the moment, guiding the children to a slightly safer area. "Stay here," she whispered. "We will protect you." Joss had rigged a small contraption that tipped a stack of crates, forcing one attacker to stumble and crash into another. Aaron used his keen observation to predict movements and call out warnings. Lyra's agility and timing allowed her to intercept and redirect any attempt to reach the children. Despite the attackers' skill, they were not prepared for the unity and ingenuity of this small family. Each maneuver, each distraction, each clever use of the environment reinforced the strength of human ingenuity and courage. Cale's calm presence and strategic mind guided them, while the trio's quick thinking turned ordinary objects into tools of defense. After several tense minutes, the attackers hesitated, their coordinated movements faltering under the unexpected resistance. Cale stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "You see now that they are not property, they are people. You will not take them." The leader made a decision, signaling a retreat. The hovercrafts rose, engines humming, and the figures disappeared into the distance. The threat had not been eliminated, but the family had survived. Lyra sank to the ground, breathing heavily, a mixture of relief and adrenaline coursing through her. Aaron wiped his forehead, allowing himself a brief smile. Joss checked the mechanical devices, ensuring everything was still functional. The children peeked out from their hiding place, wide-eyed but unharmed. Cale moved among them, placing hands on shoulders, offering quiet reassurances. "We are safe," he said. "For now, but remember, we are prepared, we can protect ourselves. And together, we are stronger than anyone who would try to harm us." The remainder of the day was spent reinforcing the home's defenses and planning contingencies. Joss adjusted mechanisms, improving traps and alarms. Aaron created maps of possible escape routes and observation points. Lyra helped organize supplies and taught the children how to respond quietly and calmly if danger appeared again. Cale observed, guiding without taking over, allowing the trio to realize their own strength. By evening, the house was fortified, the children fed and resting, and the trio finally allowed themselves to relax. The fear had not vanished entirely, but it had been tempered by experience, preparation, and success. Cale gathered everyone together in the small sitting area. "Today you proved something important," he said. "Strength is not just in muscles or weapons. It is in courage, in intelligence, in heart, and in unity. You have all shown that. You have all survived, and you have all protected each other." Lyra nodded, brushing her hair from her face. "We can protect ourselves and the children, and maybe we can teach them something too. To use what we know to make a difference. You are proof of that." The threat had receded, but the world outside remained harsh and unpredictable. Yet inside this home, with these people, something stronger than fear had taken root: trust, courage, and the unshakable bond of chosen family. As the lights dimmed, the trio realized something profound. They had faced those who sought to control them, and they had won, not with brute force but with intelligence, unity, and heart. This was humanity at its best, the kind of strength that came from ingenuity, empathy, and courage. The night was silent, but within the walls of the small house, a quiet confidence grew. They had survived the auction, the journey, and now a direct threat. Tomorrow they would face the world again, but now they knew they could face it together. And in that knowledge, they found a power far greater than any weapon, the power of being human, resilient, and united. The morning sun spilled gold across the small house, warming the walls and illuminating the courtyard where the trio and children were already awake. The events of the previous day, the hovercrafts, the trained attackers, the tension, had left a lingering thrill, but also a new sense of confidence. For the first time, Aaron, Lyra, and Joss understood what it meant to be in control of their own lives, to protect those they loved, and to thrive despite the world's cruelty. Cale stepped outside first, his eyes scanning the streets as he had every morning. But today he felt less urgency and more calm. The attackers had retreated, their underestimation of this small household teaching them a lesson. Cale knew the outside world would continue to be dangerous, but here they had the advantage of preparation, unity, and the creativity that only humans possessed. The children ran ahead into the garden, Leo chasing Mara in playful circles. Aaron, Lyra, and Joss followed more slowly, absorbing the peaceful morning. The world beyond the small house seemed distant, almost unreal, a reminder that danger existed but was not omnipresent. Cale gathered everyone near the table for breakfast. "Today," he said, "we will continue learning, practicing, and growing. But we will also prepare for the future, because one day the world outside will notice us. And when it does, we must be ready to show them the truth about humans, about courage, and about family. And now we know we can face anything. Not just for us, but for the children, and maybe for others who are like us." Aaron showed Leo how to read and interpret a simple star chart, explaining how constellations could guide travelers and inspire dreams. Lyra taught Mara how to mix colors to paint simple shapes, showing her how imagination could turn ordinary materials into something extraordinary. Joss demonstrated mechanical principles using small toys and devices, encouraging problem-solving and careful observation. Cale observed quietly, his children learning quickly, the trio growing more confident with each passing hour. Outside, the city moved on, oblivious to the small household that was quietly thriving against odds and prejudice. As the day progressed, the distant hum of hovercrafts stirred in the streets once more. Cale's expression sharpened, but he did not panic. "They are back," he said, "but today we are ready and we are not afraid." But Cale's home was prepared. Barricades, hidden alarms, and improvised defenses waited quietly while the trio and children remained alert. The attackers moved closer and Cale stepped forward to confront them. "You've underestimated us once," he said firmly. "Do not do it again. These people are not property. They are not tools. They are human, and they belong to no one but themselves." Aaron, Lyra, and Joss moved with precision, each step calculated to maximize advantage and minimize risk. They did not attack recklessly. Instead, they demonstrated clever tactics, tripwires that made noise, small reflective panels that flashed light, and makeshift devices that distracted and confused the intruders. The attackers quickly realized brute force would not work. Cale's voice cut through the tension. "Leave now and do not return. You will not take what is ours. You will not take them." The trio exhaled deeply, their bodies relaxing for the first time in days. Lyra hugged Mara tightly, feeling a warmth that went beyond relief. Aaron shook his head in disbelief, a smile spreading across his face. Joss checked the devices one last time, ensuring everything was in order. The children, sensing safety, giggled and ran ahead to explore. Cale placed a hand on each of the trio's shoulders. "You've learned something important," he said. "Humans are not only strong but adaptable, clever, brave, and compassionate. You've proven that today." Aaron began mapping the skies in detail, Lyra created simple artworks for the house, and Joss constructed small mechanical devices to make daily life easier. Each action reinforced their sense of purpose and their value beyond the judgment of society. Word of the unusual household slowly began to spread. Neighbors whispered about the small group living outside the main city, noting the lights in the windows late at night, the laughter of children, and the clever work being done around the home. Some were curious, others cautious, but a small spark of interest grew. People began to wonder why the trio had been rejected by the market, why the man had chosen them, and what made this household so special. Cale realized that their actions could inspire others, not through force or preaching, but through example. Humans could thrive, resist oppression, and protect those who were dismissed as worthless. The trio's survival, ingenuity, and compassion became a quiet statement against a society obsessed with perfection. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant skyline, the family gathered in the courtyard. Leo and Mara played quietly nearby, while Aaron, Lyra, and Joss shared small smiles, reflecting on the day's victories and lessons. Cale stood among them, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. They were not just surviving, they were building a life, shaping their world, and proving that humanity could shine brightest in those it had once discarded. Lyra looked around at the family, feeling a sense of completeness she had never known. "I never thought I'd feel at home," she whispered. "Not like this, with people who care without asking for something in return. That's something no one can take from us. You are proof that humanity, even when rejected or underestimated, can rise stronger, smarter, and more compassionate than anyone imagines." The trio had discovered freedom, the children had found safety and joy, and Cale had built a family stronger than any auction, any rule, or any threat could break. The following days were filled with learning, exploration, and quiet preparation. The family worked together to improve the home, teaching the children, and preparing for potential future threats. But each day also brought simple joys, stories shared around the table, laughter echoing through the garden, and quiet moments of connection that reinforced the bond that had formed between them. Aaron spent hours teaching Leo about the stars and distant worlds, encouraging curiosity and imagination. Lyra painted alongside Mara, creating scenes filled with color and life, showing that beauty could exist even in a harsh world. Joss built small machines that helped with daily tasks, teaching problem-solving and patience. Cale watched all of it, quietly marveling at the growth and resilience of each member of this unconventional family. The outside world continued its hustle, some curious whispers reaching the edges of their neighborhood. But no auctioneer, no buyer, no cruel society could take away what they had built. The trio had been chosen, rescued, and respected. They had discovered strength within themselves, and together they had become a family. One evening, as the sky turned orange and pink, the family gathered outside, watching the city lights flicker on. The children played nearby, Aaron and Lyra shared quiet smiles, and Joss adjusted one of his mechanical creations for better efficiency. Cale stood among them, his heart full. "This is what it means to live," he said quietly. "To be free, to love, and to protect. To be human. No one can take that away. And that is more than enough." And now they had something far more valuable: trust, love, and the knowledge that humanity could shine brightest when society said it was worthless. The house was quiet, but alive with warmth and hope. The family had found their place in the world, not defined by what they could not do, but by what they could achieve together. The trio had been discarded once, but they had been chosen now, valued for their hearts, minds, and courage. And in that choice, humanity had triumphed. Outside, the stars appeared, twinkling in the sky. Inside, laughter, love, and hope flourished. The future was uncertain, but the family faced it together, stronger, wiser, and unbroken. They had survived the worst the world could throw at them, and they had emerged not just alive, but fully human, fully alive, and fully free.